If you've ever wanted to work as a freelance editor for academic presses or journals, but you weren't sure how to get started, this episode is for you. This week on Leaving Academia, I'm talking to Laura Poole, a freelance editor with 28 years of experience working with university presses and journals. In this episode, Laura reveals the best way to land freelance work with academic publishers, why networking and not social media is the key to getting hired, how to get your first university press client, even with no experience, and one strategy that can be your secret weapon for breaking into the business. If you're looking for steady, reliable academic editing work, don't miss this episode. Now, here's my interview with Laura. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Well, hi, Laura. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, your background is a little bit different than most of the people that I have on the podcast. And you also work primarily with publishers and journals. And so we're going to get into that a little bit later today. But why don't we start by having you share your story? How did you get into academic editing?
So it's an interesting journey. I kind of fell into editing almost by accident. I was a senior in college and I went, I am an English major and a women's studies major, and I don't want to go to grad school, but I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of here. And I had work study funds and I'd worked in a science lab for 3 years. So I went, maybe I should find something relevant. So I thought, publishing sounds interesting. Okay, let's go to the university press at my university. And I did a work study there, and I did something very bold, which the hallmark of my career has been be bold and ask for what you want. And I said, will you put me with someone who'll teach me something? I don't want to make photocopies all day. This was in the mid-90s, so photocopies all day was what most of the other interns did. And they did. They put me with a journals special project coordinator. So I was taking special issues of journals and turning them into books. But I was doing, the scut work, like make the tear sheets and go research some images to use and some photocopying. But I actually learned quite a lot from that. And after I graduated, there had been a mini recession in the 90s, and the economy still hadn't really recovered, so there weren't any jobs. So I basically convinced the press to keep me on through the summer. I was like, all your interns are going away. I can stay here. Let me work for you full time through the summer. And they said, okay. And I did that. And on my last week, I used my student discount to buy my own computer. But I also said, let me stay for another month to train all your new interns. And they said, okay. So I worked that as long as I could. And I just loved the environment. I really enjoyed being in the university press. I was actually given a surprising amount of responsibility at times, and just like, here, do these tasks and then come report back to us and we'll give you more tasks. I wasn't editing at the time, but I was dabbling in it with some of my colleagues who were grad students, and I really enjoyed that. So after that ended, I still didn't have a job for a few months, but eventually my roommate, who was a much older woman, had worked at a desktop publishing place and got me to come in as a temp, and then they hired me. And this was a company that created training manuals for pharmaceutical sales reps to teach them, here's your disease for the drug you're selling, here's what your drug does, here's how you can sell it. And I worked there for a little over a year. And I talked them into promoting me at about 6 months in. I said, I would really love to be an assistant medical editor. And so they said, well, okay, you can, but they weren't entirely sure what to do with me. Meanwhile, I had picked up some freelance work from a local typesetter that I had met from the university press. I'm like, I can type 90 words a minute and I know Quark. So they were giving me some work here or there. I got to where I enjoyed the extra money on top of my paycheck. And then it got to where I was doing about 20 hours of freelance work a week on top of my 40-hour a week job. And I was bored of my job. And I went, can I do this as a living? And I had to investigate a few things, like how do you pay for health insurance? How do you do retirement savings? And what's the business paperwork? But my mom was a CPA, so she knew how to do all of this and said,
That's
no, you should do this and this and this. I'm like, how hard could it be? I was 24. I quit my job at 24 in 1997 to start my business. And I had, at that time, 2 guaranteed days a week of work from 2 clients. So I had 4 days a week guaranteed work plus the extra stuff I was doing. So that was a great start. And I was young, I was living on the cheap, I was pretty healthy, and it worked out. And I stayed plenty busy. So over the years, I'm like, I think I want to do scholarly because that's the hardest. I want to do the hard thing. And I eventually got there. And it was all from networking. Like I met someone socially who worked at Oxford University Press, which has a large production office in my town, which everyone thinks, oh, that's in New York. I'm like, no, the editorial office is in New York. The production office is in Cary, North Carolina. And I met her socially and we went, why have we not met? We've worked for all the same people. And that was the foot in the door I needed to start work with journals because it was very steady. Journals have a schedule, they have a budget, it has to come out. So I weathered the recessions of 2000 and 2008 just fine. I had plenty of work. And now I've got to the point, since it's been 28 years in business this year, which I almost can't believe, that I work exclusively for university presses. And I have extremely loyal clients and I am as busy as I want to be. I do have to turn down work sometimes, but I really enjoy it. I have a great reputation among my colleagues. It's all word of mouth referrals. I don't have to apply for anything pretty much anymore. And people they'll say, hey, we have these projects. Which one do you want? Or like, oh, we have a gnarly one for you. We really want you on it. What'll it take? So, well, flatter me. I'll be happy to do it. So it's been rewarding and I really enjoy it.
What a great story. That's so cool that, I love what you started out by saying, which was be bold and ask for what you want. And I think so many people, but also editors, kind of wait and hope that jobs will land in their lap. And yes. I've only been doing this for 5 years, but I found that you can't do that. Like, yes, it will occasionally happen, but not enough to support yourself. You have to go out and ask for jobs, contact people, cold email people, just put yourself out there. And if you get rejected, who cares? Somebody out there is going to accept you and you're going to end up with more work than if you had just hoped someone would come across your website or something. So that's fantastic. And I love that you just kept asking, just kept coming back saying, hey, I'm good at this. Let me do this for you. And
there was a lot of hustle.
Yeah.
There was indeed a lot of hustle for many years. And now I'm to the point where I don't have to hustle, which is I'm grateful for every day. So I have a website, but that's not how my clients find me. So there's not much there. It's pretty basic. I don't market on social media because that's not how university presses find editors. So I'm like, okay, I can be on social media for fun and to join the other things, but I don't have to try to market myself there.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage. And I think the other thing that you said that stood out to me was that you have a great reputation. And maybe you could speak to this, but I'm sure that a lot of that is your editing skills, but it's probably also that you're nice to work with, that you're flexible, that you're kind. When I was working for publishers, I found that individual desk editors seem to have a favorite person that they would go to. And so like the same desk editor would write me all the time and say, hey, can you take this? Hey, can you take this project? And I assumed it's because she liked me, I did good work and she enjoyed working with me. And so I think having that kind of reputation for your skills and your flexibility and just being a nice person to work with probably goes a long way.
It sure does. I've one of my best pieces of advice for new editors is get those first few projects from a client in on time. Later, you can ask for wiggle room. And once you've established a relationship, editors are often more willing to give you wiggle room. I'm like, please don't make it due on a Friday, make it due on a Monday. So I try not to work weekends now, but sometimes I'm like, I just need a little Saturday to clean up the references. So doing the first few projects for a new client on time, it goes a long way toward building goodwill. Being able to say yes whenever you can is good because then people, that you're reliable. But also knowing when to ask questions and when to make decisions. So there's certain things I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this. My concern is X. Here's my inclination on how to handle it. What is your guidance? So currently, I'll give you some examples. The Chicago Manual Style 18th edition is coming out, and people are starting to adopt it. So I've got one client who said, we are moving to Chicago 18. What kind of changes do you think we should be making? And one of my first ones, my new favorite edit is, can we remove publisher location from book citations? It's my favorite edit. Like one less thing to worry about and look up. And they're like, oh, we can do that now? What's the section? And so I'm like, oh, it's these two sections. And here's the list of other changes. And they're like, yeah, you can do it. Yes. And other times I'm reading something tricky here, and sometimes I'm able to contact the author directly. Not always, but I love being able to get guidance on things that are tricky, or offer. Like I usually try to say, here's my inclination. I would do X, Y, Z. Is that okay? Sometimes it is. Sometimes they're like, no, we can't. But I've been reprimanded once for asking too many basic questions. So like, we are paying you to just make decisions and go for it. So I have confidence on some things and communicate about other things.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's probably something that just has to be learned with experience. I think a lot of editors who are just starting out really doubt themselves and think, oh, I feel like this is the answer, but I'm just not sure. And yeah, I think a good approach is if you really aren't sure, but you think it's right, go ahead and make the change and then just leave a comment. And the desk editor is going to review the file and they can address it all at the same time instead of having to answer a bunch of different emails from somebody. But so let's talk about working for academic presses. Talk to me about if there's somebody listening who is a newish editor and wants to work as a freelancer for a university press, what does that job look like?
I really enjoy it. One of the reasons I work directly for publishers and not for authors is that publishers trust what I'm doing. I don't have to do a lot of hand-holding. And once they like me, I have plenty of work. So it's less hustle, basically. So that answers one of the other things you wanted to do. So I enjoy it. Basically, a project editor or managing editor will say, I have this project. Usually there's a few weeks lead time, which is good because it takes at least 2 weeks to get on my schedule. If they say, I have it now, and it's due in 6 weeks. I'm like, I really only have 4 weeks to work on it. So can I do it in those 4 weeks? And sometimes I say, I really can't squeeze that in right now. Often they'll say, when are you free? I'm like, oh, call me in a month, or I'll hold space for you for a month. So I get the details. How long is it? How do they want it back? What kind of a shape is it in? Is there a lot of artwork or tables or references? For journal issues, because I do whole issues and not individual articles, I will get the update. It's this many articles. We're going to need it back at this point. It's coming in about a week. And then I am sent the files. I might have a contract assigned depending on the client. Some of them do, some of them don't. I have standing purchase orders with a lot of my clients. So I'll just receive the files and I'll do a quick look through, anything look gnarly, make sure all the files are there, not corrupted. And then I'll get to work. And I have my work day, I take my kid to school, and that's, then I start, I've had my coffee, like boom, catch my morning music. And I go to town. The morning is my best time for work. That's when I'm most alert and most productive. So I try to keep the morning for work, and do appointments in the afternoon. I kind of just get in the groove, and I go, and sometimes I'm just editing references, listening to dance music. Other times I'm reading complicated analysis. I don't do philosophy anymore because it's one of the ones that just reads like word salad. I can't tell what I'm editing. And I don't do hard bench sciences. I'm pretty much in the humanities. So yeah, I just kind of get my groove and I work, and I tend to, I have staggered deadlines for everything. If I have more than 2 things due at the same time, that's a real crunch. But yeah, it's pretty steady work.
So essentially it sounds to me like you are listed as a freelance copy editor with a variety of these presses, and
Yes.
they will contact you in advance. I think that's a huge advantage of working for presses is, I often get requests, especially from graduate students who are like, my dissertation is due in 4 days and it's
Yes.
200 pages long. Can you edit
Yes.
it? And I'm going, no, like not only am I booked, but also that's not humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so book publishers are giving you advance notice, sometimes months in advance. I remember I used to get, and so you can schedule it on your calendar, decide if you have the space or not. Then it comes time for you to edit the files. They send you all the chapter files and all the details, and you're able to dive in. Of course, it's a longer project. Do you tend to, you said you might have a couple of projects going at the same time. Do you tend to try to start one book and finish it, or do you work on multiple books at once?
I have multiple projects going on at a time. I couldn't survive financially if I did just one at a time. So currently I have 2 books in and a journal issue that I'm finishing up. I've got another journal that's waterfall, so it's always coming in. I've got a couple of those, and 2 proofreading projects, which will be quick, and another journal issue coming in next week. So I break it apart. So I'm like, okay, this week I need to get this many pages done in book A and this many pages in book B. I need to do these 2 journal articles over here and 3 over here. And the journal articles are smaller. I like a book. It feels like sometimes an article feels like a snack and a book feels like a whole meal. I like the bigger paycheck. What can I say?
I also find it's easier with a book, you get the sense of the author's writing and their style and their sort of the sound of their voice. And once you've edited a few chapters, then the rest of them go a lot more smoothly, I think, because you feel like you're having a conversation with them, and it's a bit easier to edit. Whereas if you're starting a new article by a different author each time, like for a journal issue, you kind of have to readjust your brain or something.
Less than you might think. The thing I like about journal work is it is a very rigid style sheet. The citations must match this form. Footnotes must look like this. Tables must look like this. So there's a lot less wiggle room for interpretation. And sometimes that's what you need. Turn off your own brain a little bit, do the thing. I do pride myself on keeping the author's voice, just polishing it. Books, you do have to get a little feel for it. You have to ramp up. Okay, this is this author's preferred phrases. They're going to overuse this. We're going to allow it, but minimize it for impact. And we got to check facts and cross-check references, all of that. But yeah, once you get going on that, it's can get up to speed depending on how much little adjustments it needs.
And so if somebody is wanting to apply for a job as a freelancer, either with a university press or other academic publisher or with a journal, how would they go about doing that if they're just breaking into the business and they don't have all these connections yet?
So that's a great question, and one I teach people on a lot, because some people think you have to email the editor-in-chief at a press, and that is not the case. So all scholarly presses and most trade presses have a managing editor. The managing editor is the person who oversees the freelancers, vets them, make sure the database of whoever they're using is up to date. That is whom you should contact. So you can go to their webpage and just find who the managing editor is, and there might be a managing editor for books and a managing editor for journals. And then you can email them. Don't phone. They're all busy. Hardly any of them work in an office anyway. And a very simple, short and sweet email is all it takes. And that is how I started with a lot of these places. And an email that says, "Hi, my name is Laura. I'm a professional freelance copy editor. I'm familiar with CMOS 18. I've got this experience. I'd love to work on your titles. Please let me know if there are any assessments you require." And attach your resume and a link to your LinkedIn profile. That's pretty much it. It's short and sweet. Don't waste their time. You may not get a response, and it's okay. It's gonna take a lot of no's to get to a yes, but you can always follow up. As someone taught me when I was doing some other businesses, some sales related business, a warm follow up, a warm message is always well received. So, like in a month or two, you could try, reply to the message that you sent the first time and say, I'm not sure if you saw this, but I'm still really interested in your titles. Please let me know if you need anything from me. I hope we get to work together.
It's so great to hear that, because the email that you described as your first email is almost exactly what I have as a template in my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. Because that's what I did when I first started applying. I would attach and for academics out there, it has to be a 1-page resume. It's not a 15-page CV. Nobody wants to read that outside of academia. And I think initially I would, introduce myself and attach my resume. And then I realized they'd always come back with a question of, well, what citation styles or what style guides do you know?
Yes.
And so I would automatically include that in my initial email so that they wouldn't have to ask the question later on.
Good call. Yeah. With that, now I can say CMOS, APA. I've done a little MLA. Not my favorite, but I'm like, I'll do whatever you pay me to do. But I'm really, really good with Chicago. I'm strictly coin operated. I'll use whatever.
And so say they send that email and the managing editor or the contact person gets back to them. Most presses send an editing test, right? That they ask you to complete.
Frequently, yes.
And so then they get hired on. And so it sounds like this is, like we were saying earlier, you just have to keep putting yourself out there. Should they start with, kind of less prestigious publishers, or should they go for like Oxford, Cambridge University Press and all the ones at the top?
Maybe not starting at Oxford and Cambridge, but you should start whoever publishes the work you want to edit. And you can mention that, and you're like, hey, I'm really intrigued by your Latino Experience in America series. I would love to, or your economics journals, whatever floats your boat. And once you're in their database, you may not get work right away. So it's always good to follow up. Hey, I have some time in my schedule. I'd like you to get first crack at it. And one thing I found is helpful to get a foot in the door is to offer to proofread first, because proofread is lower risk for the client, and you're going to learn their style a little better. It's a great way to get a foot in the door. It's like, I'd be happy to start by proofreading. That helped me a lot. And I still do some proofreading. I actually enjoy it as a change of pace from editing, because you're looking for different things. And that is sometimes nice. I just need to look for different things and not have to, okay, it's been typeset. I can't change everything the way I would do it. But I've learned a lot from other people's style sheets. And from journal preferred or house preferred style on journals. So that's really helpful. So it does require some follow-up and just, keeping at it. But again, polite messages are always well received.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found even if I've contacted the wrong person, as long as you're polite, most of the people are happy to forward it to whoever the right person is. But
they are, yes.
Just for clarification, for anybody listening who's not sure about the difference between copy editing and proofreading, of course, when you're a copy editor, you're working in Microsoft Word and using track changes and leaving comments. But with proofreading, in the formal sense here, I know a lot of authors like to say my paper needs a proofread when it's really a copy edit. But in this sense, you're looking at a PDF file. Usually that's where it looks exactly as it should appear when it goes to print. And so you're, like you said, making just really correcting errors. If you do catch a typo or there's an image that's showing up incorrectly or something like that. And so
I call it the dividing line between copy editing and proofreading is typesetting. So you have copy editing, then it goes to typesetting where it looks pretty, and then it's proofreading. So the traditional published sense, that's when it's happened.
Yeah, I did a little bit of, both copy editing and proofreading for a UK publisher called Summersdale Publishers. They published a lot of like the gift books that you might see in Barnes and Noble, like How to Be Happy or things like that. And that was a lot of fun and a great way to get experience too. So what about applying to work to copy edit journals, issues of journals? Who should you get in touch with there?
Frequently, the managing editor of the journals division at a press. And that is different from the managing editor of a specific journal, because the managing editor of a specific journal is responsible for helping the editorial office do communications, receive submissions, make sure it gets out for peer review. And then they will hire a copy editor, but the publisher often pays for the copy editor and hires them. And so look for journals division copy editor, because a press will have multiple journals that they publish. So one interesting weird thing, I'm not sure how this happened. I got the reputation at Oxford University Press as a math girl because I'm not afraid of an equation. I don't have to check the math. That's not my job. I have to punctuate it. I have to read it like a sentence. Like a plus sign is a verb, an equal sign is a verb, and you've got a display equation, and you need a comma after it, or a period after it, or nothing after it. And because I'm not afraid of this, I was doing multiple economics journals and books. People were saying, "We hear you're the math girl because we talked to so-and-so over at this press who knew someone at that press." I'm like, I don't even like economics. How did I get this? But it has turned into quite the cash cow for me.
That's great. I love that. I have a statistics background too when I was getting my PhD in political science. And so it is fun to read some papers like that, and mix things up a little bit.
Yeah.
So something else we were talking about before we started recording was the challenges of editing edited volumes. So books that have chapters by different authors and are assembled by the volume's editor. So talk to us about that. What are some of the pros and cons of that type of work?
I kind of really enjoy the challenge of them. So you've got multiple chapters, all by different authors. The idea of them, the goal is to make them more or less consistent, but not strip out the author's voice. So like all those citations need to be done the same way. They all need to use author date or footnotes in bibliography or MLA. They all need to be cited the same way, and the references need to be formatted the same way. But beyond that, you say, well, we're going to use U.S. spellings and U.S. punctuation, or sometimes they say, oh, let them use whatever they want, as long as it's consistent within each chapter. So I kind of enjoy that. Each chapter is a different snack that leads up to a feast. And so there's a lot of cross-checking things, and some chapters will need heavy edits and some will not. So you never quite know what you're going to get. I kind of like that. I think it's fun. And I've had to do some that needed heavy editing and others that didn't, but I'm like, I'm not deciding what goes in it. I'm just editing what's there. I'm just polishing it up. If I do my job well, the author looks smart, the publisher looks good, and everybody makes money. So that's how I think of it. I'm not a guardian of the language. I'm a describer of the language. And so it can be tricky because you've got different references sets for each. If there's a whole bibliography for the end of the book, it gets really confusing sometimes. But I enjoy that.
Yeah, I found it was also sort of interesting to liaise with the editors of the book. And so typically if you're working on a monograph, you just have the author or authors of that book that you're in communication with, sending them the files, getting their responses, the things that they accept or reject that you've changed. Mm-hmm. But working with editors of an edited volume, it was interesting because a lot of them had never produced a book like that before. And so they would ask me, like, how am I supposed to do this? Or, am I supposed to send these to the authors? And I'm going, you could do whatever you want, like you're the editor. And usually it would involve, me sending the files to the editor of the book, and they would send it out to each author and who would look it over and send it back. But there are definitely like multiple layers to it, and you're interacting with a lot of these different personalities and writing styles and, strictness versus flexibility. And so there is very much a social aspect, I think, to copy editing in general, but especially when you're dealing with a project like an edited book.
Sure. Usually I'm just connecting with the volume editors. And because I work for the press has very firm instructions to volume editors on how to handle it. So I usually don't have to worry about that. I do believe they send the files to the authors and then clear up the queries. And sometimes for about half my clients, I do clean up as well, finalizing the edits, dismissing the queries. So sometimes I see them come back, which is always really, really interesting. To like, did I change your meaning here? Like, yeah, kind of because of this. I'm like, oh, now I see it. Or like, oh, no, we can't. Oh, good catch. Thanks on that one. I just made a really good catch yesterday. So I was like, expect to get a little moment of, hey, thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Many authors I find are very appreciative, and grateful for that. So let's go on. We've talked a little bit about some advice for new editors. And I think your descriptions of, what is it like to work with a scholarly press or a journal, that's going to be really helpful, because I think those are very much black boxes for new editors, that they just don't know what goes on or how does it work. And so I wonder if there are editors or people out there, maybe academics, who are thinking about going into editing. What are a couple of pieces of advice that you would suggest to them? How should they get started? Should they create a website? Should they be active on LinkedIn? What should they do to start picking up work?
The first and most important thing to do is to talk about it. Someone said to me back when I did sales briefly, your business is only open when your mouth is open. People have to know that you're willing to edit. Tell your colleagues, your friends, hey, do you have a resume or a CV do you want me to review? Do you have a scholarly blog post or an article coming up? You'll get more work faster that way. I mean, yes, do LinkedIn, do a website if you think that's how people are going to find you, but just talking about it and telling other people, can you give my name out? That makes a difference. Ask your first clients who use you for anything, do you have some friends you could recommend me to? Because I need to grow this business.
Yeah, that's great advice. And especially asking the early clients to refer you. I think anybody who writes you back and says, hey, this is so great, thank you so much, you can reply, no problem. I was happy to do it. Is there anyone you know who might also need an editor? And I think sometimes a lot of people are nervous about asking that question because they feel bad or something about it, but it's not bad at all. If you remember that you're helping people, your job is helping people and taking work off their plate. People are happy to refer a good editor to their friends.
And you can put a simple line in your email signature. I know people who do this. A referral is the greatest compliment I can receive. And one of my first clients was a grad student. And I said, I'll knock $20 off your next paper if you post some flyers in the grad student lounge for me. Because he had access to those lounges and I didn't anymore. I was no longer had a campus card. And that got me more clients. So he's like, yeah, I can do that. No problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Offering a discount of some kind, especially for grad students, that can be really helpful. Just to do something very simple like that is a great idea. And including in your signature, your website or your LinkedIn profile, or say, I'm something about how that you are an academic editor. Every time you send out an email, people are going to see that, and you never know who's going to click on it, even if it's unrelated to your work. I have it even on my personal email address, because my neighbors, maybe my neighbor's writing a book or something and needs an editor. And so that's a great suggestion.
What's other piece of advice for people just getting started is never work for free. It's tempting to say, let me try it out and help you out and do it for free. Get paid something, even if it's a cup of coffee. Okay, but get paid something, because that shows how much you know your value. So I have edited for family and they paid me, and I hated it because I don't like working for family. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, I will trade you, like you might edit your friends. You might do a round robin of editing each other's papers in a grad seminar. So get something in trade for your work.
I agree. I agree with that 100%. I see so many people who are starting out saying, should I just, volunteer? And I think, no, you should not, because your labor is valuable, even if you're starting out. It's not the same rate that you would get paid later on, but it's still worth something. So that's a great suggestion.
And if you're volunteering for like a nonprofit for editing, you can still make that pay off for you by submitting an invoice of how much it would have cost. And then that's an in-kind donation that can be written off your taxes.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. That's fantastic.
I have a friend who does pro bono work, but it's a fixed amount of hours each month. So she says, I've reached my limit for this quarter. I could do some next time. So she's not working herself in the poorhouse, which is the thing. I've done that. I've criminally undercharged a project that went on much longer. I'm like, oh man, I'm really in the hole on this one, but I committed to it. I quoted a rate before I thought it through.
Yeah, and that happens, but I think in the it also goes the other way too, right? Where you think something's going to take longer than it ends up taking, and so your rate ends up being higher than it, or your effective hourly rate ends up being higher than what you expect.
I charge by the word and not by the hour, so.
Yes, yeah, that's what I recommend. But so if you can get through it faster, what your hourly rate ends up working out to, ends up being a lot better.
Plus, especially if you're working directly for scholars, you can't argue how many words there are. Right. People say, well, it shouldn't have taken you that long. Well, it did. Well, it was only 80 pages of like 6-point type, single spaced. You can't, it's 50,000 words. You cannot argue that. It is 50,000 words. I'm going to bill you slightly less for a light edit, more for a higher edit, for a heavier edit. If you want to, I used to tell grad students when I worked for them, if you want to save money, I won't edit your references.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like it is 50,000 words. Yes, the original word count, even if you delete some, you still have to read those 50,000 words.
Yeah, and if you need to save money, you can cut the introduction or the references or whatever you feel like is the strongest parts of the text, and then that ends up reducing the cost. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, you don't take on private clients, but maybe there's an editor out there who'd like to connect, or somebody who knows of a university press or something that's hiring, how can they get in touch with you?
My website is archereditorial.com, but it's probably best to reach me on LinkedIn. And you can find me Laura Poole. With purple hair in that picture. I haven't updated my picture yet. I'm getting new headshots next month. I'm delighted to connect. And if there is an individual scholar, I know plenty of editors who do work with individual scholars, some who specialize in certain topics. I'd be happy to refer. That's one of the greatest compliments my clients give me is they call me and say, we need somebody who's good at X. I'm like, I can find somebody for you. And I love it when they come to me to ask me for that.
Yeah, that's one of the great values, I think, of the editorial community is we all have gotten to know each other. And something I've loved about doing this podcast is I've gotten to meet and talk with so many people that I might not otherwise have had a conversation with. But so fun to share that work and to refer to each other. So, well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your knowledge. And we look forward to seeing more from you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.